Welcome to the ConnectWise Manage virtual training session on time and invoicing.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Bishop, a ConnectWise business consultant and your guide through implementation training.
In this session, we will explain how to review, submit, reject, and approve timesheets. You'll get to see the process from both the submitter's and the approver's point of view. Then we'll learn how to create a standard invoice and an agreement invoice. We will also discuss business decisions for you to make when making these setups in ConnectWise Manage. Plus, we will demonstrate how to do it and then give you an opportunity to pause the video and try it for yourself. As you can see, we are near the end of the ConnectWise Manage lifecycle. Following all the steps to find a client, provide a quote for that client, then dispatch technicians to service the client all culminates in our ability to capture the time working for that client and finally invoice the client. We will look at how to review and submit timesheets from the submitter's perspective, and then from the approver's perspective, how to approve or reject timesheets. Entering all time, all the time, and on time is one of our ConnectWise Manage 5 best practices. Remember it from our services session? Employees enter their time for their events every hour in their calendar and every day in their timesheet. Entering time at the time it happens verifies what was done and is how you invoice your customers, so you want to ensure it is done right. You can enter time on each calendar item right from the My Calendar screen. You have 3 options to display time: Schedules, Time, and Time with Schedule Overlay. Schedules is the default. Select Time to automatically add time when you add a schedule entry. Time with Schedule Overlay shows what schedule entries do not have time saved, plus it highlights an entry in red where you may be overlapping time. However you choose to enter time in the calendar, it automatically populates the timesheet. For you to enter time in your My Calendar screen, the ticket or the project and the project ticket must be in a status that allows for time entry. For example, the scheduled status is an open status. The closed status will not allow for time entry. Here's the sample from My Calendar view. We can see the scheduled service ticket with no time entered. You can tell by the icon. See the exclamation point? This shows that you have not entered time on the ticket. In the calendar, you can right-click on the service ticket schedule entry to either open it or enter time in it. After you enter time and save the time entry, the exclamation point becomes a clock, showing that time was entered on this ticket. Let's look at the process to enter time on a ticket. We opened the ticket from the calendar and click the Create New Time Entry clock. Enter the start and end time to populate the actual hours. Here is the work type and all our options. We can also see if it's set to billable, do not bill, or no charge. Typically, an internal meeting is do not bill, while a customer-facing ticket like this one is billable. We can choose a pre-written standard note, and when we save or save and close, the time entry is complete. Adding a schedule entry and enter time. Because I previously saved My Calendar to my favorites, I find and click My Calendar to open the screen. I change the view to Calendar with My List because I want to add tickets and activities directly to my calendar. In the Service tab, I search for the ticket I want to work on today. I click the summary of the ticket and drag it to a time on my calendar. Then I work on the issue for the ticket. When I'm done, I click and drag to increase the time that I actually worked. Then I right-click on the time entry and select Enter Time. It populates the time from the calendar entry, and when I save, the clock icon appears. Pause this video and try it. Remember the ConnectWise Manage best practice to enter all time, even lunch, or doctor's appointment. All the time, every day, without fail. on time throughout the day while it's still fresh in your mind. This technician, Andy Bell, has a full calendar, but he hasn't been entering time every day, so his timesheet is not ready to submit. This timesheet will need a lot of entries added to complete the 40 hours for the week. However, when you enter your time every day, you won't have to enter much in your timesheet. Andy could benefit from an email reminder to enter his time for the day. We call that a time nag that you can set up to prevent this. You have two options to see the timesheet. Perhaps the quickest is to change your display type to time, and the Open Timesheet button appears. Simply click it to go to the timesheet for the week. Or go to the Time and Expense module and click My Timesheets. This shows both the Open and Close tab so you can access all timesheets. We showed you how to set up the time periods in the Foundation and Core setup session. Typically, during setup, you configure the default to show only 3 open timesheets at a time. Click the date range to open that timesheet. This is where you can enter time directly into the timesheet, which is especially useful for non-billable time. Click the plus sign for the day to create a new time entry. To add a charge code, click the Charge To dropdown. Charge codes build back to your internal company in ConnectWise Manage. This makes it possible to enter time into the system even if you don't have a ticket or item to enter on from My Calendar screen. For example, you can choose sick or holiday and enter time to your timesheet. We select training. We enter the start and end times. In the setup, you can tie the work type to the correct billable entry option. We add notes and then save and close. No one can enter time if there is no charge to, like a company on a ticket for a billable time or a charge code for non-billable time. It's important to have a few charge codes available. Examples include admin, sales, for meetings and general work tasks, lunch, sick, and PTO. You choose and set up which charge codes are useful for your organization under Setup Tables in the Time category. Now that Andy has learned to enter time throughout the day, his calendar looks much better. His work items based on tickets and activities have time on them. See the clock? And we can see he has vacation time scheduled as a miscellaneous schedule entry that has no time on it yet. He can either enter it from this screen or from Open Timesheet. From the Timesheet screen, you can see all the time Andy entered through the My Calendar screen. If it doesn't show the latest, click Refresh to see all added time entries. In addition to time entered from his calendar, he can click the plus sign to create a charge code entry for other time, such as admin or lunch. The totals on the bottom show the sum of time entered for the day. Look at the rows to see the time entered per ticket for the week. At the bottom, see the breakdown of billable and non-billable hours. This is a good area to review before submitting, to track time you are accountable for. At the end of the week, Andy submits the timesheet for approval. Once the member reviews and submits their timesheet, it moves to the Close tab and is locked down, meaning the member can no longer enter time against this period. Submitting a timesheet. I open the Time and Expense module and click My Timesheets. I select the date range to open the appropriate timesheet. I see all the time that I have entered every day from my calendar. At the bottom, I see totals for each day. On Friday, my daily total does not match my shift time, so I will enter a charge code time entry. I click the new item plus sign. Under the Charge To dropdown, I select Charge Codes and lunch as the time was a team pizza party for reaching goals. I enter the start and end times and see that the lunch work type and not billable automatically appeared with the charge code. I enter a message to explain the time. Then I save and close the time entry. Now my timesheet is complete, so I click Submit and the date range has moved to the Close tab. Pause this video and try it. Now we will review the process from the timesheet approver's perspective. It is a good practice to review submitted timesheets before approving to ensure records are properly entered into ConnectWise Manage and that each work item on the member's calendar is correctly charged. You can create a review process or checklist to verify that the member has submitted the standard hours per week for their shift, that the amount of time logged is appropriate for the job. For example, if a member entered 2 hours for a password reset, you may question if that was the appropriate amount of time for the task. You can review based on your internal requirements. For example, do you require a doctor's note for sick time? Does the vacation time entry match the vacation time request? The ConnectWise Today Notices section lists the number of timesheets that are ready for your approval. Another option to see this is from the Time and Expense module on the My Approvals screen. See pending approvals for timesheets, expense reports, project time, and expenses, plus missing timesheets and expense reports. Click Timesheets Pending Approval to open the Timesheets tab. Then, click the date range to review. If all looks good, you can simply click Approve and you are done and the timesheet goes through its normal processing. Notice that you have two other options as the approver: Reject and Reverse. Let's first look at what Reverse does. Reverse is useful when a member accidentally submits a timesheet before the end of the period. When you reverse the submission, it returns all unbilled time records to the open status so they can continue adding time. Reject only opens the rejected time entry for updating. Let's review the entire process to reject a questionable time entry. While reviewing, we see 2 hours, which seems excessive for a password reset. You could simply ask the member about it, but we want to keep all the communications about the posting in the audit trail. So we will follow this process while rejecting a time entry. First, click into the time. This opens the original time entry with details. Click the Reject button to mark the specific time entry as rejected. A pop-up opens to enter a comment about why the entry was rejected. Not only will the member see this so they can respond, but it also becomes a permanent part of the audit trail. Therefore, it's a good idea to keep it brief and professionally stated. 2 changes now appear: a notice that the time entry has been rejected and the Cancel Rejection button. Click the back button to return to the timesheet. The rejected time entry is now redlined, which helps you remember where you left off in the review process. It's also visible to the member to see where the potential error is. In order for the member to be able to make the correction, the timesheet has to be put back on their open tab. Remember, once a timesheet has been submitted for approval, it moves to the Close tab and is therefore locked against changes. We have to reject the entire timesheet to put it back on the open tab so the member can make the update. A pop-up opens so we can write another brief professional comment to the member. We can also review the audit trail from here. When we hit Submit, ConnectWise Manage generates a notification email to the submitter. On their open tab, the member can see the timesheet with the rejected status. They open it to see the rejected time entry. They click it to make the fix. They change the entry from 2 hours to half an hour. They can add more detail in the notes section. Then save and close the time entry. Then submit the corrected timesheet. The timesheet reappears in the approvals summary. The last action shows the errors have been corrected. As the approver, it's a good practice to go to the errors corrected timesheets first to review the corrections and quickly approve that timesheet. Then you can return to the other timesheets that are pending approval. click to select the specific timesheet to review the corrected time entry. When you review the timesheet, you see a green cell around the corrected time entry. If desired, you can click into it to see more. We see the time details to review and scroll down to see the audit trail. Like the time entry, the timesheet itself has its own audit trail. When we scroll down, we see our comments as part of the permanent record. Now that the time entry has been corrected, click the Approve button to approve the entire timesheet. If you have several correct timesheets to approve, use Mass Action. First, check the Select All box. Then click Approve Selected. On this tab, you can see missing timesheets that have not been submitted and the deadline is past due. Here's an easy way to send an email reminder to the members who have not submitted their timesheets. Select the missing timesheets and then click the Send Email Reminders button. Instantly, ConnectWise Manage sends out an email reminder. You don't have to draft an email distribution list or type a reminder message. With one click, you send them a message reminding them that their timesheet is past due. We call this a time nag, and that's one less thing for you to worry about. Rejecting and approving a timesheet. In ConnectWise, on the Today page, I see timesheets requiring my approval. I click to review them. The My Approval screen opens, and I click the date range to open the first one. I review work items for anything questionable, as these time entries drive customer invoices. I see totals on the side by client or on the bottom by weekday. I can click either to see more information. I click into a date to see all the time entries for that date, or I click into a cell for the time details for that one entry. This 3-hour entry to create invoices is questionable for my service tech. I scan the notes for an explanation, but there is none. I click to reject this time entry and add a brief and professional note. The comment becomes permanent once I click OK. I can see the audit trail for the time entry and my comment. This will send an email to the member. I click back and the time entry that I marked rejected has been redlined. I am done reviewing the timesheet, and I have the choice to reject or reverse the timesheet. I choose Reject the Timesheet because there is only one time detail that I am questioning. Rejecting keeps it locked down against further changes. I enter one more comment for the timesheet, and when I click Submit, the member has the timesheet back on their Open tab, and they receive an email that their timesheet has been rejected. The employee has made the correction to the timesheet and resubmitted it. Back in the timesheets pending approval, I see that the last action reflects errors corrected. I click into the date range and see a green line cell reminding me of which time entry was corrected. I click into it to see what has changed. I approve the timesheet. Pause this video and try it. It is a good practice to require timesheets to get reviewed before getting approved. Here are some decisions to consider when creating or evaluating an approval process for your organization. Do you want members to complete and submit their timesheets by end of business for the week? Of course, you will base it on your timesheet period. Does billable time require an agreement? If so, ask members to review their timesheet for this before submitting. How important is it to your business that submitted timesheets get approved on time? A policy will help make it crystal clear. Do you need a vacation time process? For example, to verify that the time entered matches the request. Should timesheets be approved before invoices are sent? If so, you'll need to make sure that your team stays on track with getting timesheets submitted and approved. Now that we have reviewed getting time into the system correctly, we can start the invoicing process. We will discuss both standard invoices and agreement invoices. Under the Finance module on the Invoicing tab is the Invoicing and the Agreement Invoicing tabs. Let's review the standard invoicing process first. This is where you can create invoices as needed. We can create standard invoices based on projects, service tickets, and sales orders. Before you start creating the invoices, though, determine your defaults. Remember, most defaults in ConnectWise Manage are created under System in the Setup tables. Look for the Invoicing category and Billing Setup table. The invoicing defaults for service tickets are very similar to those for projects and sales orders. The first of three options is bill each service ticket separately. This means we want each service ticket to appear on its own invoice. This is rarely used except with fixed fee services. The second option is bill on completion after set to closed status. This means that the service ticket must be in a closed status before the records will go to invoicing. The third choice is bill on demand. This allows us to bill unapproved time expense records instead of waiting for the timesheets to be submitted and approved. Bill on demand moves all of the available records to the invoicing screen. Even with this option, you still have a chance to review and vet records before you create or send out the invoice. Now we move to the invoicing screen because when you invoice is so critical, we see several date options. The through date shows which records are able to be invoiced as of that date and appear on the lower half of the screen. For example, if you select January 31st as the through date, then all records that are available to be invoiced as of January 31st will appear in the invoice list. The invoice date is the date that will appear on the invoice. In ConnectWise Manage, this date will work with each client's billing terms to help define when the invoice is due. For example, if you have an invoice date of February 1st and you have billing terms of net 15 days for this client, then the invoice is due on February 16th or 15 days from February 1st. You can also use the Today button for quick access to today's date. Many partners choose to bill in advance for agreements and at the end of the month for standard or as-needed invoices. Once you search for records to be invoiced, you see several columns of information. Bill amount represents the total amount for billable items. For example, in the first record, we see a bill amount of just over $20,000. That's the summary of any WIP amount, expenses, and products. In this example, the amount represents the product sales. The method column shows if the rate is actual or fixed fee as the billing method defined for that ticket or project. The hours column shows the amount of time that has been entered. The WIP amount is the work in progress amount and represents an actual dollar amount for the time that was entered. Expense shows any billable expenses. And product shows the dollar amount of any product sales. The ticket number will appear if the ticket is set to bill separately. If there's no ticket number and the record is not associated with a project or sales order, then several tickets are set to bill together. Project name will show us if there is a project or a project phase associated with the record. And the sales order number column will show a link to the sales order if there is one. To review and vet the bill before sending, click into the company name on the invoice screen. This is a good practice to do, especially with a new client or project. This invoice has 2 time records, no expenses, and 1 product. Click the Action button drop-down to review the billing recap. Here we can see the total hours and amount that we can invoice. We can also see if there's an agreement that will cover any of this time, or if there's a down payment that could cover any of the work amount. Please note, Your invoicing screen will show a billing amount, which means the total dollar value. But there could be an agreement or down payment that covers some of that amount. So, the net amount of the invoice may not be the same thing as the billing amount that you see on the initial screen. After reviewing, under Actions, we can also create invoices. It looks just like the recap, but now there is a Continue button at the bottom to create the invoice and assign an invoice number. The invoice shows details on tabs and pods. Billing Information pod is front and center with invoice number, terms, and dates. The Calculations pod with tax and total is below for easy review. You can print just the time or expense portion of the bill, or click the Print Invoice button to create a preview of the entire invoice. When we invoice through ConnectWise Manage, it creates an email with the invoice as a PDF attachment. You can preview what it will look like for the customer. Your billing logo is uploaded during your billing setup. Remember, the dimensions are 250 pixels by 60 pixels. We also see the second page, which shows time details. This will help the customer see what services comprise the totals on the first page of the invoice. A quick way to create invoices with just 2 clicks is on the Invoicing tab. First, check Select All. Then, click Create Invoices to create all the invoices in one mass action. Create and review a standard invoice. Under the Finance module, I click Invoicing. On the Invoicing tab, I click Search to see all records. I could choose a through date to narrow the search. I click Beachcomber Interior Design to open and review the time, expense, and product tabs. I see that items only appear on the Product tab. I click the Actions dropdown and select Billing Recap so I can review the invoice before I create it. This verifies that the time was reconciled separately, likely on an agreement that will be invoiced separately. I'm ready to create this invoice, so I go back and under Actions, I select Create Invoices. Now I have the Continue button, which I click, and the completed invoice is ready to print preview to print to PDF or email. Pause this video and try it. Now we will look at the Agreement Invoicing tab for your recurring revenue in ConnectWise Manage. It works the same as the standard invoicing with through date, invoice date, and search. It shows all agreement contracted billing amount that is loaded into the customer's agreement, which is separate from any work based on a service ticket or a project. See the Agreements section for more information. When you bill for agreements, do you bill in advance? Many partners do. If so, you will need to push the calendar into the future to see records that need to be created for the upcoming billing cycle. Our through date here is the March billing period, which shows all records that are available to be billed. The period start date column reflects when each records coverage period is for this billing cycle. As with the standard invoice, the agreement invoice date will be the date on the invoice and is set to work with billing terms like the net 15 days we saw earlier. When ready to create agreement invoices, check the box on the left and click the button to create invoices. The pop-up asks, "Are you sure?" This means, "Are you ready to continue?" Click Yes, close the window to see the invoices. The invoice and invoice number have been created. Click to see the invoice details. This should look familiar. It's the same as the standard invoice. Here is the invoice template that you create in the setup tables to determine the layout of the invoice. The email template will determine the look and wording of the email body. Selecting the Add Invoice to the Batch Email List checkbox allows you to use the invoice batch emailing screen to send invoices with one click. Click the Print button to open Print Preview. Review the agreement invoice preview before sending. Send individual invoices by clicking the Email button. Creating an agreement invoice. Under the Finance module, I click Invoicing just like with the standard invoicing. This time, I click to open the Agreement Invoicing tab. I click Search to see all possible invoices. I click the box to select the company to invoice and click Create Invoice. I click Yes on the pop-up window to continue creating the invoice. The invoice is created and I click the number to review it. Everything looks correct, so I click the Print Invoice button to open Print Preview. Here, I have the option to send to printer or create a PDF. I cancel that to select Email. I see options here including tokens that auto-populate the email with information from my managed database and to and from options that I can change before sending. Pause this video and try it. Now let's look at where you enter your decisions in ConnectWise Manage. In the Setup tables, in the Invoicing category, click Billing Setup. Earlier, we talked about the 3 parameters for our service ticket billing setup. To see those options, click on an invoicing location. Here we can see all invoicing parameter defaults for service tickets, for projects, and for sales orders. The settings here in the billing setup will control the default for each of those items. As you may recall, you can override these parameters. For example, on a service ticket, we may want to do some ad hoc invoicing, so we could go to the Finance tab of the ticket and check the box to bill that ticket separately. To set up charge codes in the Setup tables and the Time category, we have the Charge Code table. This is where we can create individual charge codes to be used on the timesheet. Remember, charge codes will help your members put time into the system when they don't have a ticket or project on their calendar to enter time against. Determine which charge codes you will need, then click the plus sign to create a new one. Creating a charge code. I open the System module and click Setup Tables. Under Category, I enter Time, then click Search. A list of tables appear. I select Charge Code. A list of charge codes appear. To create a new charge code, I click the New Item plus sign. I enter Jury Duty in the description and select My Company and Tampa location. I set the default to no charge and check so that this is available for use in a time entry, but not in an expense entry. I choose not to limit it to a work role, but I have to enter a work type. Then save and close. My new charge code appears on the list. And when I open a time entry, it is available for use as needed. Pause this video and try it. Calendars will affect both time and invoicing. To define settings for your custom office hours and holiday schedules, return to System, Setup Tables in the General category. In the Calendar table, you can add other work hours options, such as a second shift, non-standard office hours, and part-time. Click the New Item plus sign to create a custom schedule. When you list standard office hours, the white space in the calendar and dispatch portal will reflect those hours as white. The gray areas are outside your standard office hours as a reminder. However, you can still schedule a member then if needed. Here is how the standard hours set up for this office look. You also have a link to the holiday setup table to define your holidays each calendar year. To set a new member's timesheet start date under System, Members, select the member to open the member page. Scroll to the Time, Expense, Billing Information section to set the timesheet start date. This date will tell the system what day to start creating timesheets for the member. This is where you can format the email body for invoices. In System, Setup Tables, Invoicing category, Email Formats table for invoicing. This is where you can write and format the email that will go out when you email the invoice through ConnectWise Manage. You can choose to have it from your accounts receivable with the email connector address for your finance or collections service board. In the subject line, use tokens of code that will automatically insert data such as the invoice number and your company name. In the body, you can attach any additional notes, messages, and tokens to give the customer information about the invoice. You can import an HTML template to brand your message with company colors and logos. And there is an invoice status that you can set to auto-update to a closed status after sending to prevent sending twice. This will also help prepare for transfer to your accounting package. Changing email template invoicing. In the System module, I click Setup Tables, then Invoicing Category, then Search. In Table, I select Email Formats Invoicing. This opens the email template for invoicing. To create a new template, click the New Item plus sign. I will change the default template to show in the email body the amount due and the due date. I first change the name. Then I look for the token to use. I add the tokens by double-clicking. Then click Save and Close. Pause this video and try it. Here are year-end procedures that can help you prepare ConnectWise Manage for each calendar year. We list what you should review or update, what setup table it is in, and what category. The time period settings will need to be defined for each calendar year. This will always be a January through December setup, so it's a good idea to do it in December. You can evaluate your mileage reimbursement rate. With holidays, keep in mind that some holidays are not on the same day each year. If you've added a new shift or any changes in your business hours, the calendar may need to be updated. Also, what about sales quotas, as those goals may change from one year to the next? Thank you for joining us today. For more information, please visit connectwise.com/university. And I'll see you in the General Ledger session.